Welcome to Curiousaholic. My name's Evan. I was just playing you some heavy music today because topic is going to be dark and a little abstract. Yeah, a little heavy. So let me get set up here. All right. So you ready for this?
Yes.
So
Always ready.
how have you been?
Chit chat. Good.
Good.
Yep.
I've been better.
You've been better.
Well,
1 week is good, 1 week is bad.
Yeah, well, been a lot of fighting with the friend group lately.
Yeah. We've had some turmoil
Yeah,
internally.
some inner turmoil going on, but
That's okay.
we get through it. You know what I think the causes of all those those internal fights that we're having? I think it's like the battle of the egos.
What is that, your transition to our topic today?
That is our topic. You know,
the battle of the
mastering the
ego. No.
You weren't expecting it, huh? You were talking about the ego, like the ego before, like in detail.
Yeah,
when
I
got
was.
here. It's so funny. Every time I bring a topic, you always talk about it before.
That's so strange. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I think our friend just entered the room.
Yeah,
because he always talks about the ego this, ego that.
He's been talking about the ego so much that I decided to make a whole podcast.
Look at that, he inspired your topic.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're here now, and we're gonna debunk this ego, because it's such an abstract concept that, like, I feel like no one gets, and everyone has an ego, right? Some people think they don't, but
we all have it. We can't escape it. As much as we want to say, I'm not influenced by my ego, I'm egoless.
I feel like
I beg to differ.
the people that like say that they have the least amount of ego are the people that have the most amount of ego.
Oh, you should have said that to him. We're gonna refer to him as him.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna look at a little bit about like the history and like how it all originated. What were people's thoughts about the ego, even way back when?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Some history.
Yeah.
Some philosophy on it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So my inspiration was the battle of the ego, like I said. We've been having
The battle of the ego.
Yeah, we keep saying like, no, you have the biggest ego, no, I have the biggest ego, or whatever, and yeah, so people that don't have their ego in check usually get feisty, and they blame others all the time, and
They say their ego is
yeah, they never put themselves
not
at
under
fault,
control.
right?
Yeah.
So that was my inspiration.
Interesting.
And so we're gonna look at a little bit of history on the ego and what were some philosophers' thoughts on all that. So the concept of ego has been around for centuries, right?
Yeah.
So what philosopher comes to mind when you think about these abstract concepts?
I guess like Plato,
Yeah.
Socrates.
Exactly. So Plato had like a theory that he called Plato's theory of the human soul back in like 360 BCE. So like,
Okay.
super long ago.
Yeah.
And he basically described what the ego was. I'm not going to look at his theory too much, but he had that idea of the ego like before, and he tried to figure it out and why we have it and why it's there, right?
He had some theories,
Yeah.
Obviously, these ancient Greek philosophers were kind of monumental in beginning our thought process and our ideas of.
It's crazy to think
things.
how like progressive and like advanced they were even back then,
Even
right?
back then, yeah. But then, we dwindled down, to some dark ages and some backwards thinking.
Exactly.
Until we were able to reemerge again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Plato's theory actually inspired Freud and his theory, which really analyzes the ego more in depth. And he calls it, Freud's ID, ego, and superego theories. That we're going to look at a little more.
Yeah. Well, he's famous. Yeah. He kind of put forward those ideas.
Exactly. So he was one of the, he was at the forefront of these theories about ego and other psychology theories and all that stuff. So
parts of our psyche.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the ego is something that's still a misconception to this day. We still don't know why we have it, or if it's just part of us kind of, or part of our consciousness, or why it's there.
What's
is it there
use?
Is it there to protect us? Is it there to help us through life? Like, what is it there for?
Yeah.
Right?
Or should we like completely avoid it? There's always the thoughts of like people who are complete egomaniacs, or people who are like monks and they're like, I have no ego.
Exactly. But do they really have no ego, or are they like in denial? Like,
exactly.
I have no
Let's
ego.
discuss that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into it. Right? So yeah, let's look at Freud's theory a little bit. So Freud's theory is separated in like 3 different components. So the first one is ID. So basically, is it id?
Yeah, I think it's id.
Well,
I think IDs.
the ID. You know what I thought of when I read that? I thought of like, oh, your ID, like your identity. That's what it is.
That's interesting.
That's why I thought that.
No, I think it's actually just called id. The id. Yeah, the id, ego, and then superego.
Okay, well, thanks for correcting me on my topic.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to present it.
Yeah, he's going to present today. Yeah, so he says the id is basically the source of all psychic energy, and it's basically the primary component of our personality. So fundamentally, that's what we are. And yeah, so that's his first element.
Yeah.
And the ego, he says, is tied to the id. Yeah, it is id. Why did I think it's ID? I recall now.
That's okay.
That's better. So yeah, basically the ego is the component of the id that basically helps us to deal with reality. So that's what he says the ego's for. So, facing life and figuring out what our purpose is, and, facing challenges in life. So that's what he thinks the ego's for.
Okay.
And there's also the superego, where the superego is something kind of, I would say, like not unrelated, but like different a little bit. He said the superego, he says, is basically all the morals and all the standards that we learn from a really young age, and that are passed down to us from like our surroundings, our parents and stuff. So
yeah,
that's what the superego is.
Sort of like the moral compass.
Exactly, our moral compass telling us how to act and how to be, right?
Okay.
So those are the 3 elements, and yeah, I want to look at these components a little more.
I forgot the id, was it? I think your like primal instincts and like the most primitive urges, and then the ego is like you, basically, like your yourself, like your self identity.
Yeah, it's similar. I think you're on the right track there.
Okay.
So yeah, the id is exactly like your primitive, being, almost like
like if you weren't Evan or whatever, just yourself,
exactly,
your body. Yeah.
And the ego is almost like a manifestation of the id, almost, right?
It's sort of like an identity, like,
Yeah, that's why I thought it was ID, but it is id.
Okay.
I don't know why I thought that.
No, but I mean the ego, I think, is more like, me, I'm Evan, or I'm Haiko, or
Okay.
like who I am, like protecting my own self. I don't know. Trying to figure out the difference between the id and the ego.
I think they're all related, though, kind of,
Okay.
Like he says, the ego is a subcomponent of the id, where
I think it's like an iceberg where you have the top.
Yeah, that's what it is, essentially. Like the id is, like you said, like the fundamental level, right?
Foundation.
And the ego it kind of builds up off of that, and then the superego is kind of, like the icing on the cake, for example, right?
It oversees.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Other two, yeah.
So those are the 3 elements, and I have a question regarding this.
All right,
because we like to ask questions, right?
Definitely.
So, can we control our ego, or does our id define it for us? Do we have a say on how our ego manifests itself?
Interesting. Yeah, I think we do to a certain level. I think we do. That's why we've advanced as humans. You know, we're not animals, or we are to the core, but our ego and then our superego is able to guide us and, you know, be the compass. And yeah, it doesn't completely define us, but in some parts, yes. But I would say we're able to control to some degree. Yeah. I wouldn't say we're completely, you know, defined by the id. I don't think so. Yeah.
I agree. And it's interesting, you know, because the way he portrays the id is like, you know, the fundamental level of who you are.
Yeah.
And it's almost like your ego almost would be like ingrained into you when you were born. But do we have a way of, you know, going around that? You know what I mean? Like, if the ego was ingrained in us from the get-go, how do we change how we are, you know?
You mean the ego was ingrained as in when we were kids? And
like you're born, you know, the id is like you're born, right? That's you.
Yeah.
And the ego is kind of a manifestation of you, right?
Is so there like when they give you a name and all that, like the identity, how it was saying,
kind of.
Okay.
So if you were given that, is it hard to change how our ego like manifests itself? I know I'm asking some deep questions.
Some pretty deep questions. Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, when you're living that life with that ego of yours that you've mastered and, you know, created, and that's how you define yourself. Yeah, obviously it's hard. Like, I can't see myself as a Steve or something, you know?
Yeah. Well, here, I have a good point, actually, I think. Okay. I could be wrong. But I think the superego influences our ego. So the more we have, you know, positive surroundings, the more it's going to keep our ego in check, in a sense, right? And it's not going to make it go out of control. So I think the superego is really important, and it kind of climbs down the ladder, in a sense.
Okay.
Right? It helps us, you know, keep our animal instincts, you know, in check and not go crazy and have a wild ego all the time.
No, exactly. I mean, the superego is like the one who has the morals, the ethics, what is right, what is wrong. You know, your ego is like, you know, I don't know, you want to do something, but your superego is like, no, man, I think you shouldn't, you know.
Exactly.
The one who keeps you in check. And this also reminds me of a book that I read. I don't know if you've ever heard. It's called The Chimp Paradox. Have you ever heard of that book? No, I haven't heard of it. It's like a mind management book. It's really interesting. So basically the way that, you know, doctor, I think psychologist or whoever it was, I forgot his name, the way he puts it is that he takes, you know, the id and the ego. He says the id is like a chimp in a cage, and it's always demanding stuff, and it's always, you know, trying to be like, no, I want this, I want that, and you need to control that chimp. Sometimes you need to feed it bananas, as in, you know, make sure, you know, its needs are met, but then sometimes you need to control, you know, you need to balance it. It's like a kid in a cage that you have to find ways to control. But you can't completely ignore it, or else it can take over and, you know, cause havoc.
Balance, basically, right?
Yeah, it always comes down to that.
Always comes back. So, yeah, I think there is a way to control our ego, essentially, right?
Yeah, there is. You just have to find, you know, the techniques, build the habits, the people you surround yourself with. Because if you leave that unchecked, then your ego inflates and takes control, and you become sort of blinded by your own ego. It's as if people who have huge egos, it's as if they lose themselves. They don't like who are you? You're just this, you know, ego, really. You're not you're not this thinking person who has nuance, who has, you know, judgment. You're just sort of controlled by this ego. If you will,
kind of, I don't know, kind of reminds me of like when people are like on these, you know, big like drug benders or something, and they take so many substances and they think they're like this superior thing, you know, and they're up for days, and they're like, they have all the confidence in the world, and they think they're the shit. Sorry, my French. Yeah, they think they're the best and everything, but that's just an illusion, right? Of, you know, what the drug is doing to them and all that, and what their ego is doing to them too, right?
Yeah.
The ego feeds off that drug, and it, you know, it makes it stronger in a sense, and
they become blinded.
They become blinded.
Yeah, to reality.
Yeah.
So
I kind of heard that from like like I was on YouTube once, and I saw, you know, these people that were drug addicts, and they were telling their story about how they used to go on these long benders, and they used to take so much substances that they thought they were like on top of the world, and they could do anything, and they could go, you know, they could accomplish the weirdest tasks that no one could, you know, do, and they could talk to aliens and stuff, you know, like things that don't make sense.
Acid trip.
Yeah, I know. I think it's more like, you know, like the people that are like in the uppers and stuff, and they stay up for days and stuff, and yeah, it's
like really intense.
It's really intense. We're not advocating anything. No, obviously, we're just, you know, making parallels.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah, drugs are bad. Okay.
Yeah, every drug is bad.
Anyways, yeah, that was a little tangent, but it kind of reminded me of that, you know.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, which is interesting. So those sort of drugs, you know, they kind of
they boost your ego.
They boost your ego, yeah.
That's what it is.
And they blind you, yeah.
Well, some people have, you know, they're not confident in life, and that's what, you know, the alcohol or the drugs gives them, right? It gives them that ego boost, and it gives them that confidence that they need to get through life.
So it's basically like super ego inhibitors.
That's what I was gonna say. That makes sense, right?
Well, isn't it true? I think it's also what's the word? Related to neurology, like the way the brain works. Because I think super ego, if you want to locate it, it will be in our prefrontal cortex, which is where we make the decisions and what's right and wrong. And when we take those substances, it turns off that part of our brain. I think I'm not, you know, a doctor here.
Well, it probably doesn't turn it off, but it you know, alters its function, right?
Yeah. And then, you know, you have less of that, so you're like, I'm the shit now. I'm the king of the world.
Exactly, right? Your primal instincts come out, right?
They come out, yeah. The chimp comes out.
Exactly, yeah. The lion comes out, right? You know,
or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
interesting.
We address that question in multiple different ways
involving drugs.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know, whatever gets the job done.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah, so that was that. And, you know, so let's look at some ways to control the ego, because, you know, we just said that it is possible to keep it in check, right?
Yeah, obviously it is. Yeah.
So do you know any? I have a couple of them, but I want to hear what you think.
Ways to keep... yeah, one thing that I said, surround yourself with the right people. The people who would call out your bull, you know, crap.
Yeah.
So people who would keep you in check once your ego inflates too much. Also become knowledgeable in different things so you can humble yourself, so you don't think you know a lot. You know, people who are know-it-alls usually have big egos, right? Which a lot of times they're just uneducated. But that's the thing. Uneducated people have some of the biggest egos.
That's true.
Yeah. So the more educated you become, the more you realize that the more you don't know. So your ego is like, oh, okay, so I'm not, you know, the shit here. I should be a bit more humble. So get educated, have people to keep you in check. How else to keep your ego?
You want me to add to that? Because to be honest, you basically said the points I was going to say.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, what I was going to say is, you know, be open-minded to everything. So educate yourself is kind of what you said. And then, you know, don't get angry when things don't go your way, right? Like if you let anger and, you know, emotions take over your body and your soul, then, you know, your ego is just going to be, you know, it's going to be predominant, and it's going to take over your life, kind of thing, you know. So don't get frustrated and angry and, you know, emotional about everything. Just, you know, take a step back and be rational about things, because, you know, the ego is almost irrational in a sense, right?
It feeds off. I forgot to mention the emotional part. You're right.
Yeah. So keep your emotions in check, I think, is important.
Yeah.
And also another one that I wanted to add is do some activities that will keep you humble,
Okay.
exercise, what else? Meditate maybe.
Okay.
So things that,
Read books.
yeah. Yeah, read books. And that's a good one too. Things that will humble you. There are a lot of things that could humble you in life, right?
Yeah. I guess learn new activities or things that you're not good at necessarily.
Well, see, that comes back to what you said, right? It's learning more and more. So educating yourself essentially, right? So
Comes back to that.
through different activities, right?
Yeah.
I just think about how many times I was humbled by a workout, for example, right? Like, sometimes you think you're the shit. Sorry again. Then you have a hard workout, and you're like, I'm not that good. That beat me up, or
Try to do a heavy lift, and then you're like, oh,
you fail,
okay.
right? That humbles you, and it keeps your ego in check for real.
Yeah.
Because it shows you that you have more and more progress that needs to be done, and you're not the best, and you're not there yet. Essentially.
So people who have big egos, essentially, what is it? It's that they think that they know it all and can do it all.
Exactly.
I think it's essentially that. So you have to try to prevent that by educating, doing different things, seeing where you're lacking, seeing that there's always more to learn, always to better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that I learned for like keeping your ego in check is from watching HAIKO'S podcast. He talks about that like all the time, and he has a really interesting approach on how to keep your own ego in check, and every day, humbling yourself until you realize, hey, I'm not the best, and I have a lot to learn still.
No way, yeah. Jocko has a way to humble anybody on this planet.
Yeah, I mean, but it's interesting because his mentality, you could take some of those ideas and learn how to humble yourself too, because
it's self-discipline.
It is.
It's keeping your own self in check.
Yeah. People that are not disciplined, they think they have it all, and they're I don't need to
I don't need to work out every day. I don't need to sleep 8 hours a day. I don't need to eat or whatever. I know what to eat.
I've got it all, right? I mean, I'm healthy. I don't need to do that.
I seem fine. No, you're not fine. It's like,
you could always be better, and it's your ego that's stopping you from getting better.
Exactly.
Right. So
your ego always wants to be the winner. Always say, I know it all. I can do it all. But I guess your super ego, or the thing that can go outside and look at it from a third person perspective and say no,
Yeah, exactly. So those are some good points. So those, I think, are some interesting ways on how to keep your ego in check. So yeah, those are some good ways.
Some good tips.
So okay, now we're gonna get into the main question. So, is it possible to be egoless?
I don't know. Sometimes I even doubt if the Dalai Lama is egoless.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what if you reach nirvana or something?
Yeah, exactly.
You've transcended.
But that's the thing, the whole religion with Hinduism and Buddhism with nirvana is that, you need to be egoless. But can someone even reach that? That's... I think it's more like a... it's like, how people say it's a goal, but you will never reach it? Or like some vision that you have that you want to go there, but you'll never be there. But it's the process of trying to go there. Yeah. So I don't think anybody, I just don't think anybody can really be egoless. I guess some monks or some, people like who meditate a lot and are very like mindful and aware of themselves could be pretty egoless.
Pretty egoless.
But not quite like, you can't be a robot. Like if I punch you in the face multiple times, I think at one point your ego is going to be like, whoa,
Exactly. Because the ego, it's also, it helps us to survive. It protects us in a sense, right?
Yeah,
if someone punches you 10 times in the face,
you're just going to be like, take it there.
Exactly. You're not going to take it until you die, right? Unless you want to die or something.
Oh, yeah, unless you're suicidal, but that's another question.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, so then could maybe people be clinically egoless?
clinically egoless. Like they have so little amount of ego left that it becomes like a problem.
No, I mean as in people who are very much clinically depressed or have some sort of other psychiatric ailment that it causes them to lose their ego in some way.
Yeah,
You know,
but
someone who's like insane, completely insane, and you punch him and he's just like, just takes it. Could someone clinically, that's what I'm saying, be egoless?
I think it's an illusion. That condition that they have is telling them, look, you have no ego. You're free of everything. But if that condition goes away, the ego comes back, right? Like your friend Connor Murphy, right?
My friend.
Connor Murphy, for those that don't know, is he's another YouTuber. That he was
peculiar one.
Yeah, he was like a fitness YouTuber back in his like early days of YouTube, and then he got into taking like ayahuasca, which is a psychedelic, and then he claims now that he's free of ego and he doesn't have it anymore, and he's free of everything when it comes to that. But is it really true, or is it is it really the
guy
ayahuasca?
Has a huge ego though.
Right, he does though. Yeah. Everyone sees it. Like we know that,
the stunts he does.
Yeah, pretending to be dead and stuff, and
some crazy videos.
Is that really someone that's egoless? He did admit to some of the PDs he took. I guess maybe it helped him open up. But it doesn't mean you're free of ego.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think majority of people, even the monks and all that, are not egoless. But the whole clinical aspect, people who are extremely depressed, I don't know. I'm like, could you alter the brain of someone somehow so they could become egoless?
Well, maybe if they're
but I think that's pretty hard. That's pretty...
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, if they're...
But then they would almost become like a vegetable.
Actually, let's go back to that point where we're talking about psychedelics. There's something that happens when you take too many psychedelics and you get like a really intense experience, and they actually call it ego death. So
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah. So what happens is you're in this psychedelic experience, and then I guess something happens and you just lose touch between what is real and what is not, and you're you're free of ego in a sense, and you lose
completely
your ego
detached
because of the psychedelics. That's a real thing, and some people actually experience ego death, and afterwards they're almost like brain dead.
Are they brain dead?
Well, figuratively speaking, brain dead, not like
actually
clinically.
Yeah. Okay. But after that's done, they're like a new person, sort of. They see the world differently, or
they see the world differently, but it's definitely not a good thing, right? To have ego death.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it can't be good, right? You lose sense of reality.
So what, after the drugs, they're just effed up?
Yeah, they're completely in another state of mind. Completely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, they lose touch with actual reality.
Exactly, that's what it is.
Oh wow, okay, that's intense then.
Yeah, it's very intense, and it's a real thing. It happens to people.
Okay, so that kind of circumstance then.
Yeah,
I guess someone.
That would answer your question that you were asking. Could someone be clinically egoless? I guess, yeah. If
maybe with certain drugs,
certain substances could cause ego death.
Okay, I see. Interesting. Okay, but I was thinking depression. Could that also cause?
Maybe if you reach the lowest of lows, maybe, and
Yeah, I think here we're really going to extremes to find ways that someone could be egoless.
Yeah, but ego death is a real thing that people experience.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. So I guess, besides that, most people, we could say no.
Yeah, for most people.
Normal, just, healthy people, yeah.
Yeah, so for most people, you're never going to reach that bottomless, pit of the ego. You know, you're always gonna be you're always gonna have some amount of ego in you.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think we should demonize the ego.
No,
because a lot of new rolled self-help gurus, it's always about try to get away from your ego and let's dismantle the ego and be free. It's like, okay, look, you can be smart in life, but you don't need to say I don't have an ego. An ego protects me. An ego is there to sort of protect my identity. And
yeah, I don't know. I've never been someone that really cared about that, Like I'm not someone that goes around saying I have no ego. I don't care. I have an ego. I know I do have one. Like it's there.
Yeah, you just need to find the balance.
Yeah.
That's
no,
it.
I don't make my ego take over who I am and be like mean to people and shit.
Yeah.
But I know it's there. It probably has a reason to be there. Right, like you said, to protect you, to help you advance in life.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you want to better yourself, you want to say I'm good. I'm like I want to be the best, maybe, or well, that's your ego.
Yeah, and sometimes being the best is not a bad thing either. You want to get better, you want to progress, you want to
That's what pushes you forward.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's so bad about that? I never understood why people want to be so free of the ego
and let's all be equal and let's all hold each other.
See, like, even in nature, right? Like you look at animals and stuff. Maybe they don't have the understanding of what the ego is, but I think fundamentally they still have an ego, protecting them. And,
oh yeah. Well, they're the most primitive. Well, I think it's the id, most of them.
Yeah, mostly the id, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe like some primates or gorillas or chimps might maybe have an ego. Maybe if we give them a name and like identity, and they start being like, "Oh, okay, Jimmy the chimp" or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Kangaroo Jack.
Kangaroo jacked.
So yeah,
that's
impossible to be egoless.
Yeah, we could say it's pretty much impossible, besides certain extreme cases, drug induced or maybe mentally ill to the degree that you become egoless, but besides that,
exactly. No.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
interesting.
It is okay. So let's address this here. So how do we deal with people that don't have their ego in check at all?
Yes, I need to know. Help me, man.
Okay, so from what I've researched and what I've heard, one good way of keeping someone in check with their ego is kind of pointing out to them that their ego is taking over in a discussion without actually telling them. So be subtle about it. So like give some little hints, like something maybe like, hey, you're not being too open-minded to what I'm trying to say, or something, or maybe you're closed off to this idea or something like that. Just like keep them in the right direction, right? Don't tell them, hey, you're just talking from your ego and you're saying just stupid stuff.
Always blaming ego.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a good way. So be subtle about it.
Yeah, I guess try to express your needs in a non-violent manner. To say, hey, I'm trying to tell you something, but you're not quite hearing what I'm saying.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And that comes to my second point, is staying calm and don't let your own ego into the discussion.
Because then it becomes the battle of the egos.
I think that should be the title of this episode.
The battle of the egos. Yeah, that could be good.
Yeah. So yeah, if your own ego comes into play, then how is that other person's ego gonna, go away or go down, or I don't know how you want to call it, but
yeah, because then you become blinded, and how can you keep someone in check when you yourself are blind? It's like trying to steer a blind person while you're blindfolded.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good analogy, I would say.
Yeah,
because right, I mean, you can't really get around that if your own ego is interfering as well. You're just gonna go back and forth like, no, this is your fault, or like
just battling each other's egos. Yeah,
exactly.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And yeah, listening to their opinion is important too, right? So don't let your own ego think that you're always right. Maybe this person, sure, maybe his ego is maybe a little bit out of line, but maybe he also has a point to get across.
Yeah, so I guess is to try to always see, because a lot of people speak with their own egos, and it's always the anger and emotion that comes first. But you have to try to, toss that to the side and see what's behind it. What's pushing that person to say those things or become emotionally reactive like that.
Yeah, good point. So,
like, we know someone, is very much always, it's like throwing stuff at us, but there's something behind that's hurting, that's wants to speak in.
Yeah.
It's the true need.
Yeah, like I said, someone that proclaims that they don't have an ego usually has one, and but just because their ego is not in check doesn't mean that they don't have something they're truly trying to say or put across. And I'm sure it has meaning, right? But they have to find the proper way of expressing what they mean.
Proper communication skill, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing with ego, is that it blinds you from expressing yourself properly.
Yeah, true, exactly. That's the shortcoming of ego. It's that it doesn't let you say what you really want to say, what you're missing, what sort of need you have to fulfill. And so that was well put. For sure. Any other ways that you could think of? People not their ego in check. Any other ways? I guess maybe let them time to reflect on themselves. If you see where the ego is so inflated, where it's just taking up the whole space in the conversation, that you're not even able to engage in any way or get to the person to say, hey, look, let's just take some time off, okay? Take the time to reflect, and then
I really like that.
Discuss again.
Yeah, that's super smart.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to take time off, really.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
I mean, it is simple, but I'm sure it's effective, right?
Yeah, because that naturally just forces the person to be like, why did we stop? Or what happened,
Exactly, yeah.
Because you want to make the person reflect, but they can't while their ego is so inflated.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really good point.
Right. So, yeah.
I can't think of any others, but I think we gave a couple.
I think we covered pretty much all of it.
So that's about everything I wanted to talk about today. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Yeah. So we all have egos. It's inevitable. We can't escape it. We can control it. So that's what our goal should be. So I guess, yeah, we should aim to mostly be egoless, so to speak. Okay. But don't say that you are completely egoless, because it's at some point it's gonna come out. Okay. And just respect it, be present with it, and then just see what's making it come out. What is making the chimp to refer to that book, like scream and say, I want, give me attention, right? So give the right attention, but also, try to keep yourself in check by being humble, educating yourself, being open-minded, and, surrounding yourself by the right people who will keep you in check if need be. And just have balance, people.
Yeah. Yeah, those are some good points for sure. Just reiterating a little bit, it's impossible to be egoless. We all have it, unless you take too much like ayahuasca or something. And always try to find ways to keep your ego in check. Keep yourself humble, and don't let other people's egos influence your own ego, right? If someone has a very inflated ego and is always in your face and telling you bad stuff and mean stuff about you, don't get involved in that game. Just lower your own ego and then look at it from a rational perspective, right?
Yeah, if you can. And if it's too much at that moment in time, then take a step back.
Yeah, attempt to break off and
to think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
To each to their own, and reflect. Yeah. I think that's pretty
So that's
much
about it. Thanks for listening to our podcast. We appreciate it. You could visit us on YouTube and give us a like, a comment. You could check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. Right?
Always Stitcher.
Always Stitcher. And leave your ego aside and give us a like.
Yeah. And subscribe.
And subscribe.
Yep.
All right, guys. I'm gonna play us out, but I need to plug in the guitar first.
Can you?
Yeah, I think I should be good.
Do it. You should be fine.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. And
have a good one.
So we'll have Evan here play us out. Gonna play us some of his power chords. All right. Catch you guys later.